What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Discussing how the D-backs should build out their bullpen this free agency and giving you a couple of targets the D-backs should consider this offseason.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work from my podcast to my graphic design to my photos. Please go check out my website to see everything by me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we're going to be discussing how the D-backs look to build out their bullpen this offseason. We'll give you some free agent options among relievers and some other positions that the D-backs should consider targeting. Then, of course, ending the podcast with a little play review. And today we're going to be bringing down Justin Martinez's 2024 season. So a whole bunch I want to talk to you guys about on today's show. But first, I want to say, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And now let's discuss the D-backs bullpen strategy this offseason and some guys that they should consider going after. Well, we'll actually discuss some of those targets in segment number 2. But for the D-backs, the bullpen is always a big point of contention because since I've taken over this podcast in 2020, I've discussed at length and in detail about how the bullpen has probably been the biggest area of weakness for Arizona during my tenure as the Locked on Diamondbacks host. More specifically, closing out games for Arizona has been so bad the last few years. And right now, it feels like the D-backs are finally in a good position with AJ Puck and Justin Martinez. It feels like the D-backs finally have a couple of relievers who you feel really good about in terms of their player pitching profile and their overall stuff, where you enter next year and you're like, yeah, either one of those guys can be the closer for the D-backs. And I feel great about the situation. But what makes those two guys so great, so dominant, is that they're these high velocity, they throw it hard relievers, right? AJ Puck is a guy who averages like 97, 98 on his fastball. Martinez is a guy that hits triple digits, averages triple digits on his fastball, sinker ball. Like, these are guys that throw hard. And when looking at this D-backs bullpen the last few years, one of the biggest issues and gripes I've had with Arizona is the fact that they don't have enough of these high velo arms. Look around the game of baseball today. What do you see in every bullpen? You have 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 guys that could go out there and throw 95, 96, 97, even touch 100. And for the D-backs the last few years, they just haven't had enough of those arms. It's been too many guys who were like, oh, maybe he has good command, or maybe he has like a good curveball, or he's a sinker ball pitcher. Like, the D-backs need to change their philosophy and go after more Pucks and Justin Martinez's. And Mike Hazen kind of tried to switch that philosophy entering last offseason. I think even entering like 2023's offseason, he was trying to say, we got to add more high velo arms. We got to have more guys that throw hard in the back end of our bullpen. Like, he's been trying to preach that the last couple of off seasons, but then you look at the moves and it's not adding up to what Mike Hazen has been preaching. Because when you think about the dudes who have been added to the D-backs the last couple years, I mean, I guess a Miguel Castro throws hard, but outside of that, it's like Paul Sewald. It's like, I don't know, any of the other relievers, Andrew Chafin, Scott McGuff, like, do those guys really throw hard? Brandon Hughes, do the Logan Allens? Like, Mike Hazen has talked about adding more high velo arms in the back end of the bullpen, but he just really hasn't done it. He's made moves like going out and getting Paul Sewald and McGuff and getting the Miguel Castros and the Chafins. And at times I've liked some of those moves. I liked it when we got Chafin. I thought Castro did have a little bit of upside as a high velo dude, but you look at back at all those moves and you say, you know what? Just get me guys who I know are good. The stats tell us they're good and they throw hard. Don't give me someone who just throws hard, but their stats are bad. And don't give me someone who has pretty good stats, but they top out 90 miles per hour. I want to find more AJ Pucks, more Justin Martinez's, guys with both stuff, potential, and are actually good and can perform the job that is being asked to do. Because right now, you look at all the relievers that the D-backs have signed the last few years, and it's been just a motley of terrible dudes. I already mentioned the Hughes and the Logan Allens, but the Joaquim Sorias, the Tyler Clippers, the Hector Rondones, the Ian Kennedys, the Oliver Perez's, the Mark Melansons. Like, how many guys have we gone out there and acquired and, like, they just weren't good for Arizona. They weren't good for the D-backs. Sewald did have a little stretch where he did perform very nicely both this past season and last year, but for the most part, he wasn't good for Arizona, right? But you know who was good for Arizona that the D-backs acquired? AJ Puck, who is absolutely nasty and shut down this year and a strikeout machine. And he's been a good reliever for the Marlins. Can we find more guys like AJ Puck? Can we find more guys on the D-backs current staff who throws hard, like the Justin Martinez's who we've developed? And can we find more guys like a Kevin Ginkel who has good stuff and can throw hard? Yes, he has been up and down throughout his career with the D-backs, but for the most part, there's been more positive than negative. You look at Bryce Jarvis, he was having a solid season. What does he do? He throws hard. Does he have overwhelming stuff? No, but he has solid stuff. Just give me guys who throw hard with solid stuff who I can trust in the bullpen. That's all I'm asking. That's why a guy like Gilbert Diaz, I think, could be interesting. I think his stuff is solid. He throws hard. He looked decent last year, but you never know with these guys because I probably would have said the same about Slade Ciccone. And for Slade, I still would have preferred to see him a few more times in the bullpen than as a starting pitcher this past year. But even with Slade, he was a guy that threw pretty hard. I thought had decent stuff, but just didn't work out for Arizona this year. It's not always going to work out, but can we see more guys of that AJ Puck, Justin Martinez elk? Because I'm tired of going after these bums who just aren't good enough. And bum is definitely too strong of a word. I thought about saying it as I said it, but these guys who just, you look at the numbers, the stats are like mediocre, they're mid, the stats are already fine. And then you look at their pitching profile, it's like a 91 mile an hour fastball guy. It's like, why do we sign him? Like the D-backs just signed or claimed Seth Martinez off the waivers from the Houston Astros. And ASU guy, love that. I'm a Sun Devil. You look at the numbers are actually good for Martinez. 3.59 ERA this past year, 52 innings pitched, 14 games finished. 2023, he wasn't good, but 2022, 38 innings pitched, a 2.09 ERA. Like, this is a guy that has had solid strikeout numbers in his career, pretty good whip. The issue is when you look at Martinez, yes, the ERA might be good, but just another dude who does not throw hard at all. You look at the pitching profile of a Seth Martinez. Yes, the ERA might be good, but his four-seam fastball tops out at 90.8 miles per hour. I don't care if he had a good season last year with Houston. I like that he's a good reliever. You definitely need guys like a Seth Martinez, but I think the D-backs have enough of those guys. We got the Joe Manflies. We might have to put Jordan Montgomery in the bullpen as well. Like, the D-backs have enough guys playing off the finesse, playing off changeups and stuff like that. I don't need another one in Seth Martinez. So for Mike Hazen, can we please prioritize high velocity relievers this offseason? And we'll discuss a couple of those relieving targets for Arizona in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to place a wager down on an upcoming Phoenix Suns or Arizona Cardinals game, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be FanDuel, because get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Right now on FanDuel, well, not right now, always on FanDuel, they have this thing, which is my favorite thing to do on FanDuel, called the same game parlay. You could take your Arizona Cardinals and take Murray over on passing yards, Murray over on rushing yards, Cardinals money line, parlay those three legs together, and if it hits, you get a big payout. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first win of $5 does not hit. So please visit fanduel.com and never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back to the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Let's discuss some more free agent options for the D-backs. We've been kind of doing this, I guess, like every day on the podcast now, but there are just some dudes who I think are really good that are affordable for the D-backs. I think that they can get in the building and actually really help out this franchise for next season. The next guy I want to talk about is not a reliever, actually a starting pitcher, but this is the kind of guy who I actually think could be the perfect #4 starter. Guys like Erod and Monty might think, because of their contracts and like their stature, like maybe I should be the #2 or #3 starter ahead of like a Brandon Pfaadt, or maybe even ahead of a Merrill Kelly. But this next guy, I actually think wouldn't mind being the #4 starter, because he is going to be 35 at the start of next season. But Nathanvaldi, another Texas Rangers pitcher who took down the D-backs in the World Series, already have one of those in the rotation, Jordan Montgomery. Again, anybody we add to the rotation is probably contingent on D-backs getting off either Monty or Erod's salary. But if they were able to do that, and if they want to add one other guy to the rotation because you just don't trust Erod or Monty for next season, whether it's one or both of those guys for next season, and you feel like you need one more starter to fill out a playoff rotation, and then also just extra depth in case anyone else gets hurt, I think Nathan Eovaldi could be a perfect guy. Now, the biggest issue with Nathan Eovaldi, he is a guy that deals with a lot of injuries, has only has one 30-plus start season since 2014. This is a guy who does not have a lot of full start seasons, and so um it health is going to be an issue with him. But thankfully, if you're going to have Gallen, Kelly, Fott, and one of either Erod or Monty, health shouldn't be a problem if Evaldi misses time. And then once the playoff rolls around, if the D-backs are hopefully in a postseason matchup, Evaldi, I think, is perfect. He's a big game pitcher. He's still good strikeout numbers, guys. Still pretty good velocity numbers as well. Maybe he's not as elite as he once was, and I'm not sure if he was ever elite, but I do think Evaldi's good, and I also think he's one of those guys that gets better in the biggest moments. I trust Evaldi in a big postseason game, in a big postseason matchup. I think he steps up in a big way. Career 305 ERA and 79 innings pitched in the postseason, 12 starts. Evaldi, I would not mind at all bring into this D-backs ball club. Strikeout percentage this past season, probably starting to tick in the wrong direction just a little bit, but still solid at 24% this past year. What I really like, though, 6% walk rate. So look at the command for this guy. Decent strikeout numbers, doesn't put a lot of guys on, and I think just a really, really good pitcher that could perfectly fill out your D-backs playoff rotation. Next up, let's talk about some relievers. How about Clay Holmes? I think he's become like a controversial figure a little bit among relievers, because he's definitely had some up and down moments throughout his time with the Yankees where it's like, I don't know how much Yankee fans even trust Clay Holmes, but you look at the numbers for Clay Holmes, and outside of his like whip being kind of high, he kind of gives up too many hits and walks too many guys, like you'll still take basically a 2.8 ERA the last 3 seasons, a guy averaging around 25 saves a season the last 3 years, about 10 strikeouts per 9 innings the last 3 years. Like, I still think Clay Holmes is a very good reliever. My thing with him, I too wouldn't want to bring him in as a closer. I think Clay Holmes would actually be elite as your 8th inning, 7th inning guy. Like, if he's your setup man along with either, whatever. If Martinez is the closer, then a Puck Clay Holmes situation as your 2 setup dudes is elite. Whether it's Martinez and Holmes setting a puck, like, it does not matter. I don't want Clay Holmes as my closer, but as my setup man, I love it because in non-save situations this past year, 21 innings pitched, Clay Holmes had a 1.71 ERA. So despite the angst you hear from Yankees fans at times surrounding Clay Holmes and his up and down nature, it's only as the closer. If you brought him in as the setup man, seventh, eighth inning guy, I think he would be perfect in Arizona. How about a potential DH? I still want the D-backs to go out there and try to sign Jock Peterson and Grichuk. And if honestly we could just run back those two, that would be fantastic. But if we can't, another guy who I think is kind of interesting is a little Tyler O'Neill, who would probably like to play DH primarily if he can, because who wouldn't want to just play, be the offensive batter? But he can also play in the outfield. He's been an outfielder most of his career. He actually doesn't DH a ton at all, but I think he could be a perfect kind of DH because I don't think he's graded as like an elite outfielder or anything like that. Maybe I'm wrong on him. I mean, just look at the defensive WAR on Baseball Reference. He's been negative the last 3 years. So I think he's a guy who's kind of Jock Peterson-esque, where he has played in the outfield. Like, young Jock was playing the outfield, but you never really trust him out there. You wanted him in your lineup because of your bat. Same with Tyler O'Neill. If he came to Arizona, got Corbin, got McCarthy, got Gurriel, you still got Alec Thomas. Like, you don't need him to be in the outfield. If you just brought him in as a power righty bat, coming off a very strong season with the Boston Red Sox, where he had 30 home runs, 847 OPS, and only played 113 games. This is someone back in 2021 had over 900 OPS and 30 plus bombs. He is up and down when you look at his career. Don't know how much you can truly trust in terms of him having a repeat type season that he just had with Boston, because if you get his 2024 season in a D-backs uniform in 2025, like, that's the perfect kind of guy to replace a Jock and a Randall Grichuk. He'll keep the vibes alive. He'll have the same sort of production. Like, I think Tyler O'Neill is a perfect plan B option if the D-backs can bring back Jock or Randall Grichuk for next season. But those two guys, I think I would definitely take over Tyler O'Neill. But if you want to do O'Neill versus Jock Peterson, I guess the case for O'Neill would be he can at least play a little bit in the outfield. Now I want to discuss Justin Martinez and whether or not he had a fantastic 2024 season. Spoiler, he did, and setting up expectations for 2025. But before we get into that conversation, I first need to talk to my guys out there, my dudes, because guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time you stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. And also, I want to talk to you guys about Arena Club because for most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending 2 grand or more on a Corbin Carroll rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but there's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockdownmlb and use code lockdownmlb. That's arenaclub.com/lockdownmlb. Code lockdownmlb for 10% off your first purchase. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back to the podcast and let's discuss a little Justin Martinez player review. And let's discuss his strengths, weaknesses, and goals for next year because this was the Justin Martinez breakout season. I did not have Martinez on my radar at this level at all. Of course, we knew Martinez from 2023 when he broke on the scene, but this was a guy who was shelled last year, right? We knew he had fantastic stuff and can throw hard, hit 103, 104 miles per hour, but we didn't know if he was a sustainable pitcher. We didn't know if he was ever going to figure out the command issues because Martinez comes up last year and he has almost 13 strikeouts per 9 innings and is throwing hard, lighting up the speedometer. What is it called? The radar gun. There we go. But the issue is he almost had 10 walks per 9 innings, and he almost had 12 hits per 9 innings, almost had 2 home runs per 9 innings allowed. Like, yes, the strikeouts were good, but everything else was really bad for Martinez last year. And so it was hard to believe if this was going to be a guy that really popped in the D-backs uniform, if he was sustainable, because I've seen guys like Luis Frias, so I'm like, man, that guy could throw 97, 98. He's got a wicked curveball. There's just dudes who have nasty stuff who are never able to realize their potential. And I was scared that maybe Justin Martinez could be one of those guys. But this year, definitely was still some flaws in his game, but broke out in a massive way. 2.48 ERA. Somehow only had 8 saves, but this was a fantastic season for Justin Martinez, and he has closer of the future written all over him because the thing with J Mart, he is only 23 years of age. This is someone that could be around in a D-backs uniform, closing games for a very, very long time, and he had a very good season to start. And when looking at the strengths and weaknesses from his past year, one thing that I like that Torey Lovello definitely loves is he's a balanced split guy. Righties, lefties, it doesn't matter. 650 OPS against lefties, 570 OPS against righties. He dominates both. Actually has a 221 batting average, exactly allowed against both right-handed and left-handed batters. You look at clutch situations for Martinez. Being a closer, you cannot put runners on, or at least the runners that are on, you can't allow to score because Martinez does put runners on. He still has command issues. He still walks too many people. Like, all that's still true. But when men are on the bases for Martinez, men on, 223 average, 609 OPS. Runners in scoring position, 617 OPS. So despite him having walk issues at times and putting too many people on, has not slowed him down, has not stopped him, has not messed him up at all because of his pitching profile and his ability to get a strikeout at any moment. I don't like it when pitchers put runners on the bases, but he's one of the few exceptions where he could walk the bases loaded, right? He can walk the first 3 batters, no outs, and then strike out the next 3. That's how good Justin Martinez and his stuff is, but I'm not saying that's the way I would want Justin Martinez to work. I prefer more clean innings, but if he has to walk somebody and then strike out the next batter, he can do that because you look at Justin Martinez this season, 2 outs, he's unhittable. Even when there's 1 out on the board, he's unhittable. 1 out, 191 average allowed. 2 outs, 191 average allowed. Like, this guy shuts down innings, and that's what you need as a closer, right? There's not a worse feeling than when Paul Sewald is on the mound. There's a man on second or third, and there's 2 outs, and you're just shaking and biting your nails. You're like, oh my God, if he throws an elevated fastball, it's going to get crushed over the right field fence. But for Justin Martinez, once he got 1 out on the board, it's like, oh, this is over. I don't even care if there's a man on third or 1 out. Like, Martinez is going to strike out the next guy and then strike out the next guy. Martinez is that dude. And one other thing he does very well, he is the best against the best competition, because when you look at his splits against teams above 500 versus teams below 500, he's a guy who has a 2.23 ERA against teams with above 500 record and a 2.86 ERA against teams with a below 500 record. So he's better against the best competition in baseball, and that's what you need from a closer. And of course, his go-to pitch, the split finger, nasty. A sub 100 batting average allowed on it, and the expected batting average also sub 100, 0.099 expected average allowed. His slugging allowed on his split finger this past year, 0.122. He allowed 6 singles and 2 doubles all season on his split finger. 82 at bats, like insane stuff. And you were not able to hit it. If you were, congrats to you, because that was his most dominant pitch this season. And it was his go-to put away pitch. 36.5% of the time, he threw that as his put away pitch, or that was the time people were put away by that pitch. And so dominant closeout pitch for Justin Martinez when he needed a big strikeout. But some of the things he needs to work on, definitely slow down in the second half. You know, being a rookie makes sense. You look at his numbers the final month of the season. Justin Martinez pitched more like the guy we saw in the first few months than the guy that we saw in September. Maybe the Dbacks are in the postseason, but he's definitely closer to the bottom of my blame list for this organization. His sinker could be a little bit better too. He throws it the most, but he allowed a 325 average on it. Expected batting average of 281. So people are seeing the sinker well. I would say, though, the slugging is not high on the sinker at all. So it is a pitch that people do hit for a high average, but the contact, the quality of it's probably not the best. It's probably hard singles. It's just a lot of hard singles on his sinker, but it doesn't really go anywhere. So I don't like the amount of contact he gives up on it, but at least the ball really isn't doing damage when it does come off the bat of opposing hitter. Then again, like we've said, the walk rate, he has to get it under control, because it's probably his biggest issue right now. 30% K rate this past season. We love that. But the walk rate, 11.7%, we do not like that. And so if he can clean that up, Martinez, for next year, like, honestly, just do what you did this past year. Get a little bit better in the areas that we just discussed. Clean up your sinker a little bit. Clean up your command a little bit. But going to next year, whether you're the closer or the setup man, I feel great about you going into the future. You throw super hard. You're young. You're ascending. And so Justin Martinez, I think he's perfect where he's at. Did a little bit better in the areas we discussed, but for the most part, just repeat your 2024 season, and that will be a successful 2025. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.